Hi friends, Aitherea here, and today I'm going to be talking about the new Cloud of Darkness Chaotic Raid. This is a 24-man raid with a difficulty that, according to the devs, is somewhere between extreme and savage, and I will give my thoughts on that in a bit. But yes, I have cleared this chaotic raid, and it took me about 4.5-ish days of being a complete and utter degen. It came out on the 24th, which was Christmas Eve, so I couldn't play a lot that day. I think I played only like maybe 3 hours, and then same with Christmas Day, it was like 2 or 3 hours that I was able to try and prog the fights. But after that, some of the days I spent like an embarrassing amount of time, and when I actually got my clear, it took me 9 hours. And when I say got my clear, I don't mean like I was progging the whole day. I mean I was joining enrage and or clear parties that were supposed to have been, ready to clear, and it still took me 9 hours. So we will get into that in a bit. But first, I want to talk about the fight itself, what I thought of it, if I liked it, that sort of thing. So what was the difficulty of the fight? I think it does kind of depend on the phase, but I would say overall probably an extreme trial, maybe like a floor 1 of a savage. And the thing is, it's made a lot harder by the fact that there's 24 people. But phase 1, and by phase 1 I mean the part with all of the clouds on the wall and the doom mechanics and all of that. I don't mean like the first 2 hits, because some people are calling phase 1 before the floor changes like it's literally 2 attacks. So we're not doing that. That's not phase 1. Phase 1 is that plus the thing with all the clouds on the walls, death and arrow and all that stuff. That's phase 1, okay, babes? Phase 2 is the tile stuff. Phase 3 is phase 1 repeating. So phase 1, I adore. I love. I think it is so fun, especially as a healer. It's very fast paced. It kind of reminded me of Storm's Crown because I feel like it has a pace that you're kind of constantly looking where you need to go next, and you kind of need to be aware, especially of like the stored mechanic, and you always kind of need to be aware of your positioning and where you need to go. I think this fight, particularly phase 1 of the fight, is really, really fun for healers. A lot of healers have complained that there's not enough for healers to do. There's not enough to heal, there's not enough responsibility, blah, 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 blah. And I personally have said some of those things in the past, as well as saying things like, I wish there was more mechanics that weren't necessarily just healing. This fight has added in a doom mechanic, and there are a few different ways that people can get doomed in phase 1. Mainly, there's these hand things that come out and slap you, and if you get hit by that, you'll get doom. And then there's also a mechanic called death, which sucks you into the middle and dooms you if you don't dodge it properly. So that means that the 2 healers have the opportunity to save people from doom. And the cool thing about doom in here is you actually don't have a long time. I think the timer is like 6 seconds. It might be 5, but I think it's 6. So within the amount of time that you have with like Asuna being on a GCD, because it's no longer casted but it's still on the GCD, you can only do 2 people. You can only Asuna 2 people if you're on top of things. So between the 2 healers, you can save 4 people. And sometimes it's a little difficult because you might be in the middle of casting like a GCD heal, especially if you're me and you play White Mage. Like maybe you just casted a Flatus Rapture and now your GCD is rolling and it's really much harder to save 2 people. But I think it's really fun to have that extra little responsibility. But I do want to note, if you don't get Esuna'd by your healer, it's still your fault that you died because you're the one who didn't dodge the mechanic properly. If you dodge properly, the healer doesn't have to Esuna you at all. So let's not play those games of trying to blame the healer for your death. That was you. That was you having a skill issue. Okay, anyways, moving on. The other fun thing about phase 1 is that there are some really heavy hitting tank autos, and the reason they hit heavily is because the tank gains these little stacks of a debuff, and the more they get, the harder the boss is able to hit them, like the more damage they take from those autos. So the tanks will of course do periodically tank swaps, and they can help the healers out by tank swapping earlier rather than later, but there usually does still come a time where I have to pay attention and heal the tank, and I have to kind of keep that in the back of my head always to keep checking on the tank. I feel like as a healer there's really a lot to do in phase 1 because the mechanics are pretty fast paced, so you're watching out for the different mechanics that you have to do, both the party mechanics like stacks and flares and the rapid particle beam, which is like a line attack party line attack kind of thing. But then there's also like watching the clouds on the side and making sure that you don't get hit by those. And then, not getting sucked in by death or knocked off the platform by arrow, all while healing the party, cleansing these dooms with Esuna, and making sure that your tank is alive, throwing them a regen, a divine benison, or whatever kind of shield you can offer depending on what job you're playing as the healer. So I thought it was super duper fun as a healer. Phase 2, this is the tiles and the towers and the platforms phase. If you've done E9S, this probably is a pretty easy phase for you. I've never done E9S because I started raiding, Savage raiding in Endwalker, so I actually started playing the game in Shadowbringers, so I never raided back then. But I do have a friend who did, and he caught on really, really quickly to those mechanics. He was like, this is like the same mechanics as E9S. So for him, it was kind of just shaking the dust off from, E9S was years and years ago. But for him, he was pretty darn good at the mechanics right away because he'd basically done them before. So if you've done E9S, you definitely have a little bit of an edge. The thing about Phase 2 is, I feel like the mechanics in Phase 2 aren't as fast-paced. As a healer, you kind of go in, like during the phase change, there's a raid wide, and then there's another raid wide called Dark Dominion. So that's kind of like the big healing that you'll do. And then if you're on the platform doing the towers, there's also going to be a pairs or a spread mechanic. So you will have healing then as well because anybody on that platform is taking that damage. And if you're doing the Aurelia strat, your groups will be together enough that the healer, like the off healer, the healer 2 that's on the tiles, will be able to reach. So that healer should still be helping. You can reach your group, so you should still be shielding and helping your healer on the platform heal up the group after they take those pair stack or spread mechanic damages. Like, you should be helping with that. You should be mitigating that. You should be helping the other healer heal that. But definitely more damage is going out, I think, on the platform than on the tiles. Honestly, on the tiles, you kind of just have to stand in your spot, and then there's a few times that you'll have to move out of the way. And it can be a little tricky because you're sort of sharing a tile. Like, you're not sharing a tile, you're on your own tile, but there's like an extra tile that you and the DPS have to share. And I mean share in the sense that you need to refresh your tile every so often so you don't fall through. I think you have 40 seconds on the tile before you fall through. So you do have quite a long time, but there are some mechanics where you can kind of get stuck there. And it's funny because when it turns pink, you do have like a good few seconds before it'll drop you through. So you don't panic, you have some extra time. I've literally been in situations where both me and the DPS had a pink tile. Whoever's tile was pink would go first to refresh their tile. The other person would go, and we both lived, and it was okay. But every now and then we do die to the pink tiles because sometimes you get trapped there with mechanics like Mario Kart, where people from the other teams have to like walk all the way around, and they're kind of like right in front of you and in your space to refresh your tile. So that's a thing. But for P2, I actually think the tiles are more fun than the platforms. I don't know why. I think I just really enjoy the synergy that I have with like the two players near me and how we respect each other with the tiles and like refreshing our tiles, and like, I don't know, I feel like we're taking care of each other, and it's just this really cute little vibe that I really enjoy. But the thing about Phase 2 is that there's basically 2 walls in Phase 2, and both of them are towers. Now, I don't necessarily think the towers mechanics are that difficult. It's basically like you have the ad, and they're going to cleave left or right, and then they're also going to do a spread or a pair stack mechanic. And it can be in any order. It could be like left, left, spread. It could be left, spread, right, left, pairs, left. Like, it can be any order, right? But it's really simple. You just have to watch the ad. The tells are pretty obvious for it. And I think what happens is some people, there's a few problems that I've seen happen in my groups. First of all, people will bait because the pair stack is a bait, and it's whoever's closest. So people will bait incorrectly, and there'll be like too many people too close, and then, they end up kind of hitting each other. Sometimes it's a positioning issue where it's like one of the baiters is slightly too close to the person in the other group, they die. These kinds of things. Or if it's like, let's say the mechanic is cleave one side, and then it's pair stacks and then cleave the other side. I think some people like panic into thinking they're going to get cleaved, so they don't fully go to the spot that they're supposed to be in. And again, they're too close to another group. or another pair, I should say, and then they kill them. And then what happens is, because those people died, they can't take the tower because the towers have little dots in them that show you how many people need to stand in them, and they will explode if not enough people are standing in them. And you can survive one tower. When it explodes, it'll do a little bit over half of your HP, so as long as you're topped off, everyone is fine. But if 2 towers go off, it wipes the raid. And I noticed in my prog that was one of the big walls, was like I'd be trying to do bramble prog, or even further sometimes. I'd be like ready to do swaps prog and we're dying to like the first towers. It was really, really awful. Honestly, a huge issue of just like hitting your head against a wall forever. And that's why the second sort of wall in that fight is swaps, because what happens is if anybody is dead during swaps, the swaps do not go right, because the raid plans and maybe you watch Mr. Happy's video, whatever strat you're going with, they have specific spots that they want everyone to be standing in so that they get swapped to specific places. That's what they're doing that for. So when people are dead or in the wrong spot, the swaps get screwed up. And when that happens, sometimes the towers get screwed up, because now that the swaps are screwed up, you can't as easily follow your raid plan or your strat that you're trying to do, because there's, the wrong people over here. So who's supposed to take this tower? Who's supposed to bait where? It all gets messed up. And sometimes you can survive the towers after the swap, because by this point you have tank LB3. So that's what a lot of groups do, is they'll tank LB3. But then sometimes you do not clear the fight, because even if you get into phase 3, which is the same as phase 1, it just has like the mechanics that you didn't do in phase 1. It's like in phase 3. What happens is you can't clear the enrage, because now if the party is a little bit lagging behind on their DPS, you no longer have your DPS LB3, and oh look, you didn't clear it. My friend told me that he had a group that used their tank LB3 for the towers, the second towers after swap, and they got down to 0.3% but did not clear, unfortunately. So it's kind of really rough in Party Finder, and I really feel that the biggest issue with this fight is really just how phase 2 is not recoverable. It is very, very hard to recover in phase 2. And part of that is because anybody who's on the tiles can't really raise people who are supposed to be on the platform, because there's no way to get from the inside to the outside. So anybody who's on the platforms, the healers, those are like the only people who can raise anybody. And if you're not a red mage, you know what I mean? Like, you only get one raise every 45 seconds, basically. And you don't really have time to sit there and cast a bunch of raises, because your tank's taking autos. Other people might make small mistakes that you can heal up. Things like that. It's really, really hard. I have seen one version of the Aurelia strat that puts all of the healers outside. I have not tried it, but I think it's genius and I would love to try it, and I kind of wish it would catch on in Party Finder, because I think that would make the fight slightly more recoverable. It's still a problem though, because like if a lot of people are dead and they have to get back to their tile, yes, they can take the Atomos portal, and it's just tricky though, because like if they are bad at it like I am, like trying to line it up, they might still just fall off. And sometimes they're just not fast enough, like they get raised, because again, even if there's more healers on the outside, only one raise every like 45 seconds-ish. Although with more healers out there, it will be easier to have one person kind of like healing up while someone's like, okay, I'm casting this raise. Someone, to take care of people while you're casting. But yeah, it's still just this thing where sometimes like you just don't have enough time to like get back to your particular spot on the tiles before a mechanic happens or before swap happens. And sometimes there's like mechanics like wild charge, where it's like you really need to have a tank in front of you. If your tank is dead and they're not in front of you, you're probably gonna die, unless like a DPS takes it alone and sacrifices themselves for you. So yeah, it's a lot, and I think phase 2 is just not recoverable enough for a 24-man fight. And I'd like to further talk about this whole 24-man aspect of it, because the fight itself may not seem that hard, but the fact that there are 24 people means that there's 24 chances for mistakes, and thus in phase 2, 24 chances that you wipe and cannot get to enrage. And you can make a small mistake and that can still lead to a wipe. It's just such a high percentage of possibility to fail, and that might be why it took me 9 hours to get a clear, despite being in groups that were supposed to be clear parties, not prog parties. The Party Finder culture that we have does not work for this content. And let me tell you why. Party Finder is like this constant merry-go-round okay? You get in Party Finder, maybe you have to wait like 20, 30 minutes. Some groups have waited up to an hour, but I feel like roughly 20 to 30 minutes for it to fill. If you're lucky and you're able to hop into like a party that's mostly full, it won't take as long. But I've literally had experiences where I'm the last player needed, I'm the last healer needed, I hop in, and then they like ready check and we're about to go in, and then people just leave. Like 2 people or 3 people just leave, and I'm like, why? Did you wait here all this time and then you just leave? And now we're back in Party Finder for another 10 to 20 minutes. Because it's really, I feel like in this fight, what I'm noticing a lot is that oftentimes there are healers or tanks like is most needed. And like the last player we need to get is almost always like a healer or a tank. And it's just rough. Like it can be kind of a long wait because again, you're trying to fill with 24 people. I don't even know, but it's like this constant merry-go-round because there's also this thing in Party Finder that a lot of people do in 8-mans where it's like, let's say that you know the fight really well and you're ready to clear, or maybe you're doing re-clears. What a lot of people do is they'll do like 3 wipes, I leave. And that can work for 8-man because there's more choices for the parties that you have. I sometimes think that can be a little harsh, but I do get it because sometimes I do feel like, oh my God, like, come on, this is a re-clear, like what the heck? It's not that hard. But with 24 people, this just does not work because it's like every time somebody leaves, the group is like reset. Because like I said, there's 24 chances for mistakes. So you have to give it a little bit of leeway, right? There's not just 8 chances for mistakes. There's 24 chances for mistakes. That's 3 times the amount of chances for mistakes, right? Because I definitely noticed with the 24 mans, it takes the group a little bit of time to get the synergy, and 3 pulls is just not enough. But some people are still leaving after like 3 pulls. Some people are nice and leave after 5, but honestly, most people are leaving after 3 pulls. I had a group that on the first pull got to 0.8%, 0.8%, so under 1%. We didn't kill, but we got so close. And then the next 2 pulls, unfortunately, we kind of memed and we wiped. People left after that. That was 3 total pulls. One of them that we almost killed the boss. We got so close. And I was like, when we got that close, I was like, yes, this is the group. This group can do it. But then people left. I cannot believe these people left this party that on the first pull got almost cleared. It was so crazy. But then because people left, now new people are coming in, and those people now have to get with the synergy of the group. And you also have to understand that because there's 3 different alliances and their positioning in this raid is different, sometimes it takes people a while to adjust because, oh, for the last like 2 hours, I was playing in Alliance C in this particular position, and now I'm here in Alliance B and it's a little bit different, and oops, I ran the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like that happens. So it's like, you really have to give the team a little bit more time to shake off the dust. I mean, if you're there for a while and like it's supposed to be a clear party and they're just not clearing, like, yeah, I understand, like leave, I would too. But I feel like with this kind of content with 24 people, it's something that you really have to commit for. If you don't have the time to commit to like at least an hour, but preferably a full lockout, then like you probably shouldn't be going, because you're just kind of like, it just, like I said, it feels like this spiral, this merry-go-round of like constantly like cucking these groups, because the moment that people leave and you have to get new people, it's like starting all over from scratch. That's how it feels. And it's really frustrating. And then another thing, I have noticed that people have been more toxic with this content than any content that I've like done or seen. Like, yeah, it's not like I haven't seen the occasional jerkwad in Savage or even Extreme Trials, but I think this kind of content brings out the worst in people because, like I said, it took me 9 hours to clear. Again, I was ready to clear. I think in those 9 hours that it took me clearing, I probably made like 1 mistake. I was nearly perfect. I was nearly perfect at the fight. I kept having to change alliances and I still hardly ever made mistakes. Hardly. And I could not clear for 9 hours. So I get why people are feeling frustrated. I do, because there were times that my morale was incredibly low, but I didn't flame anybody. You know, I definitely came to my friends in Discord and vented about it and complained about certain players, like this red mage that decided to play as a healer. By that I mean they were playing a red mage, but they were being a healer, and I was like, you are not a healer. We're not going to clear if you don't DPS. Like, here's the thing about red mages. We love you for your raises. We love you for your dual cast raise. But for the love of God, if I see you healing somebody, I am going to step on your tile and we're both going to die because stop. Do not, you are not a healer. Okay, anyways, like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, yes, even I get toxic, but not in the group. Like, my toxicity is kept in my brain, in private Discord, with my friend, you know, like that kind of thing. That is where my toxicity is. I do not sit there in the group and start like flaming people or complaining or making passive aggressive remarks or anything like that. But there is so much of that in the party finders that I was in when I was trying to clear. It had been a long day for me, and having the morale of other groups be toxic was really hard. It was really refreshing. There was one group that I was in that was really toxic, and I left because they just weren't doing well. I was hopeful that the group would do better because the group leaders were more strict and they were removing people who were memeing, but like it just wasn't working. So I left because not only was like the group just not doing well and constantly having to refill because they kept like kicking people out, but also it was like a really bad environment. And the next group I got in was like way better environment with like much better morale, and people were not so toxic, and I felt so much better. Like, it's crazy, but the morale of the group matters. So for the love of God, do not be toxic. Keep that to yourself. And yes, if somebody makes a mistake and you think that they don't know what they're doing, like, you can tell them, hey person, you were supposed to be on this marker here, or you were supposed to be in this spot here, like blah blah blah. You can do that. You can help tell people like, hey, you were the one that did that wrong, because sometimes that's necessary if you're gonna make any progress. But you don't have to be a dick about it. That's all I'm saying, is you do not have to be a dick about it. And I definitely, and the group I was in was like toxic, but my friend was telling me about how they were in an even more toxic group where people were like flaming the healers because they got doom and the healer didn't estimate it. Again, that was your mistake, so like, shut the hell up. But yeah, he was saying that some of the groups that he was in were like incredibly toxic, with people directly picking on each other and like name calling and insulting each other for making mistakes. But it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't matter how easy or hard the fight is. We're all human. We're not robots. And we're gonna make mistakes. It happens. Even somebody like me, who I was like throughout this whole experience telling my friends how like perfect I was at the fight, blah, blah, blah. But even I'm not perfect. Like, I may have spent 9 hours and barely made any mistakes, but that doesn't mean I made 0 mistakes. It happens to everyone, especially when you're in this party finder for so long, because like, I feel like this really sucks you in because you get so close to the clear. You can taste the clear. You're like, oh man, this group made it to enrage. If I just go a little longer. And you end up like really burning yourself out if you're not careful. So that can also lead to you being tired. And if you're tired, you might make more mistakes because you're tired, right? So yeah, it's just this fight. The thing is, I do like the fight. I do think the fight is fun, and I especially like phase 1. But I honestly think that phase 2 is just poor design for 24 people. I really do. Because it doesn't matter how easy or how hard we think it is, people are going to make mistakes, and you're going to be on that wall of towers and clearing for hours and hours and hours. Because I was scared that like my experience with it was just because I went really early, and like the raid plans were still in their earliest of things, and like a lot of people, because like part of my prog was also just like I didn't even know like what the tells were for certain things, and I had to learn them the hard way, you know, because there was no video out. There was like some preliminary raid plans, but they weren't very good, and they didn't actually like tell you how the mechanic worked. They were just like, stand here. Like, they showed you positioning, but they didn't really show you like how to know when to dodge the mechanic, or like what the tell for that was, or things like that. So yeah, it was a little difficult, and I think for me that made the prog take longer because I wasn't just like watching a video and knew what to expect. I had to like figure these things out. So my friend progged like really quickly through the fight. In like one day, he's already like I think he spent like 8 to 10 hours on it, and he's already like ready to clear. But his clear is not happening. Like, his clear taking him forever, because for him, especially because he did E9S, the prog was really quick, but the clear was not. So it's like, it doesn't really matter whether we think the fight is easy or hard. The problem is that with phase 2 being so unrecoverable, it is a wall. You're either going to wipe on the first towers or the second ones. It's like it happens over and over and over and over. And then it feels like when you're finally lucky enough to get past that and to get to phase 3, it's like you can't beat enrage. You get so many of these close calls where it's like, oh, 0.8%, 0.5%, 0.3%, 1%. Like you're so close, but you just can't get it. And then you have to spend more and more time at this wall in these parties that like don't even get past phase 2. They struggle to get into phase 3 because, oh, swap happens and there's too many people dead. Like it's just not recoverable for 24 people and 24 chances for mistakes, and they're gonna happen every time. Like the fact that I was ready to clear and made barely any mistakes and it still took me 9 hours to clear just goes to show that this design is not good for 24 people. I wish that when they make another one of these, if they do, because I'm sure they'll see how this one goes and decide, I wish that they would make the next one so it's more like phase 1 where it's more personal responsibility and there's not these walls, because I think it's like it would be one thing if there was just like, I don't know, I just honestly don't even think that there should be body checks. I just don't. And if there are body checks, it should be like some sort of like soft body check or something like the lasers. I feel like that's fair. But like the towers thing was just trash because you get stuck on it and then you get stuck on it for swaps, and it's just not for 24 people. It's just not. I just really think phase 1 is the right kind of vibe for this kind of fight with 24 people. But the other thing that I have noticed. So we were excited about like the idea that veteran players could help new players because of this new player bonus. But it actually kind of ended up sucking for me because I had so much trouble with this fight. Like I said, it took me 9 hours to clear, and the motivation that I had to clear this fight was the hair. I wanted the hairstyle so badly. I do not have it. You want to know why I don't have it? Because people cleared before me, and I cleared on the 4th day, remember? I actually technically cleared on the 29th. It was 1 a.m., but we're going to call it the 4th day. And enough people had cleared to cuck me out of the hair that I only got 29 of the materials. And for the hair, I think you need like 48 or 49. I think it's 49. And you would get 48 from like a single clear. So I mean, you still I think you would still have to clear one more time. I'm not 100% sure on that. But there were people acting like they cleared once and got the hair. So I'm not 100% sure. But either way, I felt like I got cucked out of the hair because I'm like, well, now I have to like farm it so much more. And I wish I would have been in a party that was like fully of new players. But at the point that I was trying to clear, I was dead tired. It was 1 a.m. Things weren't going well. My morale was low. I just wanted to clear. I wasn't looking for parties that were like duty incomplete. And you would think that like, oh, having like 12 players who've cleared already would make it easier to clear. So like it's actually valuable and worth it because like they're helping the people that haven't cleared yet. It's not. It does not matter like what group you're in because like I said, 2 people messing up can like wipe your entire raid. So it doesn't really matter how good everybody else is. It's not something that like, oh, having like veteran players is going to help carry you. Like, no, because people are going to mess up. And it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So then it ends up feeling bad instead to have like the veteran players because now I can't get my hair and I have to go through this hell again. It's just so annoying because it's like, I like the fight. I really do. It's just like so frustrating to try and like farm or clear. And one of my friends was saying that like the farm parties are not that great either. It's like the same issues because again, there's such a high percentage of failure with 24 people because it only takes 1 to 2 people to make a mistake to kill and wipe everyone and have to start over completely. And one of my friends that I was talking to said that they did 4 hours and only cleared 3 times. Like they were farming for 4 hours and only cleared 3 times. Guys, this is an 11-minute fight. Like the actual time of the fight is like, I think like 11 minutes from like start to finish if you have a good pull. A good pull, a clear pull, 1 and done is like 11 minutes. So 3 clears, if everything goes well, should take roughly 30 minutes, 35 minutes, whatever, right? And it took him 4 hours to get 3 clears. So it seems like it's going to be a nightmare to farm this. And then they've level synced it to 735, which this is a little confusing, but if you go in with 710 gear, you have 710 gear. You don't have 735. You're not synced up. That sync will be later. Like when we get 740 gear, if we go into that fight, we'll be synced down to 735. So there's no gear carry in this because the highest gear that we have is 730 and a weapon 735, the savage weapon. That's the highest gear that we have. So there's no gear carry in here to like help kind of pad things out. Maybe you could survive 2 towers with the gear carry. I don't know. I feel like in the future they should really allow this to be unsyncable, or at the very least allow for a gear carry. But like they don't allow it now, and I don't get it because again, with the how unrecoverable it is and how like punishing phase 2 can be from just like a couple people dying and the towers getting set off, like we need Essie, for the love of God, you better patch this and get rid of that item level sync and let us have gear carry because I just imagine like what happens in the future for farming this. The other thing that sucks about it is like it's PF is pretty active right now, which is great. You can just jump in, and there is the radar Discord if you want to try and do like a preformed group. But I also feel like in the future, this is going to be one of those contents that's just kind of like banished to Discord, where like you just can't do it in Party Finder. You have to find a Discord that schedules it and sign up for a run and go with them, which is kind of sad. You know what I mean? Like there's actually really good rewards in here. I love the mounts. I love the outfit. I'll show you. I got the top, thankfully. I would have really lost my shit if I had cleared that fight and got nothing for it. But luckily I did get enough materials to get the top, and I did clear during a bonus period. So I don't know if that affected that or not. I actually don't know how many you get for clearing just during a normal time, if it's 1 or 2, but I got 3, which allowed me to get the top. Thank God they didn't make it 4, because I would have literally lost my shit because I was like a degen progging all week and then taking, like I said, literally like 9 hours to clear. If I would have got absolutely nothing, I was already super pissed and like demoralized that I couldn't get the hair. But luckily I got the top, and I really, really like the top. So the gear from there is so cool looking. 730, it's an alternate avenue to Savage, although I actually think getting gear from Savage is easier. I'm not lying. I think it'd be easier to prog and clear Savage. We were hoping that this would be a good way for new players to like get into Savage, and I honestly don't think it is. Because of the 24-man aspect, it just means you keep wiping the towers. That's all that it means, is you're just going to spend way more time. And I literally think you'd have a better time doing M1S and M2S because they are relatively easy for Savages, and you can actually gear up with them. Like I genuinely think here's the thing, is there is a lockout on Savage and there is not a lockout on Chaotic, so that's something to consider. But like if you're just trying to get into Savage, for the love of God, just do M1S. I swear you'll have a better time. At least from my experience of like Chaotic, I think M1S would be the better, easier route to go. But yeah, like I really think it's easier to some extent to get gear, if not for the lockout, to get gear from the Savage, because it's just like 8 people and you're not going to spend anywhere near as much time. At least I did not spend. I progged the Savage tier pretty casually, so I actually had a pretty good time with it. If I had tried to do this casually, I think it would have taken me a month to clear, and it took me about 2 months to clear the entire 8-man Savage that's going on right now, but I could have cleared it faster. I had like a 3-week span between clearing M3S and like even going into M4S, so like I could have cleared a lot sooner. I just was lazy, but I think that was great because I progged it at my own pace, really casual pace. I probably progged no more than like 9 hours a week, and it was pretty quick. It was great. I really had a great time with it for the most part. I mean, I did lose motivation near the end, and I did have a rough start with M1S because I started week 1, and like that was a whole thing. I did complain about that, but overall it was a good experience. Where this, it's hard for me to say that I had a good experience because I think I pushed myself too hard. I burned out, and I also it was just a bad time because, like I said, why did it take me 9 hours to clear when I was like perfect at the fight? You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to feel like it's a good experience when you just constantly feel like people are holding you back. And it's not like Party Finder where like you get held back from a clear for like 2 or 3 hours, because that was what happened to me with like M2. It was like we were having trouble clearing. We probably got held back from the clear for like 2 or 3 hours. This I got held back for 9 hours. And that was just for the clear. But there was other prog points that I definitely got held back on, where I'm like, I'm on brambles, I'm on swaps, whatever, but I can't get a group to get there. So there's another 2 to 3 hours for each of those, just trying to get through the swamp of Party Finder. Like, it just, for 24 people, I'm just gonna say it again, we cannot have this level of unrecoverability. It's just not acceptable, and I really think if they want to continue making these fights, I think the difficulty itself is fine. It's just, it needs to be recoverable, and it needs to have more, it needs to be more like phase 1, where it feels more chaotic, it feels fast paced, there's a lot going on, there's a lot to pay attention to, but it's mostly personal responsibility, where if you screw up, you die. You don't wipe the whole entire raid. That's what it needs to be. Fast paced mechanics that feel, chaotic, random, because she can do a variety of different patterns of her mechanics. That's what this should be, with personal responsibility and not so much unrecoverability and just let like 1 or 2 people end up wiping the whole group, That's what it needs to be. I think I've said enough now. I've complained enough. The fight design in itself is really cool, and I think it'd be great as an 8-man, and I guess it was because it was E9S, but yeah, I really liked phase 1. I feel like I'm being more negative than positive here, and it's just one of those things where it's like, I do like the fight design. I think Tiles is really fun, and I think it was really, really fun as a healer. I really enjoyed the amount of responsibility I had. I really enjoyed having those Asuna mechanics, and I just felt like I loved how it felt like I was juggling so many things at once. It was really rewarding as a healer and it made me feel like I was really good at the game, and it was really satisfying. That is true. But I think the frustration ended up outweighing the satisfaction because, like I said, with 24 people, even simple mistakes can cause a wipe in phase 2, and it just isn't recoverable enough. So that is where I will leave it. Please let me know if you've done the chaotic raid at all, what your thoughts are in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please consider leaving a sacrifice to Lord Algorithm in the form of a like, comment, share, or subscribe. Once again, thank you for watching, and thank you so much to my channel members for supporting me.